All right, and shalom, shalom. So, welcome to Oklahoma City King James Bible University. Then I'm Deacon Micah, and today then we're going to be picking up where we left off with the Preceptor workshop on God hates the sinner and the sin. So, this is the fourth video in sequence, and what we're going to be doing today will be something a little different. So, instead of me pitting up my precepts up front, then I'll just be checking everybody else's work, just giving some feedback and just making sure that you guys are on the right track with learning how to precept on your journeys. So before we get started, there's a couple of announcements that I wanted to make. And the first one is going to be just related to Microsoft Teams. So we're going ahead and let me go back over. And so it's touching up on Elder Jenkins' Sabbath class. So then if you're already in Microsoft Teams, an Elder Jenkins Sabbath class, which is on Saturdays at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, then I am uploading his files. So all of his Deuteronomy PDFs and his Psalms PDFs and all of that is readily available. So then if you are in the Microsoft Teams class and you want to take a look at that, that stuff is being uploaded. So we already, as far as Psalms, we're on to chapter 3, but everything from chapter 1 and chapter 2, then all of that is uploaded, and it's just ready for you to go ahead and look into it at your own desire. And the Deuteronomy chapter 28 PDFs, those are being uploaded as we speak, and I'm just doing that slowly over time. So if you want to look at that, just go on ahead. And now just going back to the teaching. So this overall, then a big focus behind, why I chose this particular subject to demonstrate the preceptor is just to let people know and expose that false doctrine that going around that God loves the sinner but hates the sin, which we already looked at Sirach chapter 12 verse 6 and Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14 verse 9, which we know that that's not true. The Most High, then he is the spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. So then I want to show you guys a couple of things before then I start looking at people's assignments and giving them their critiques. So going to get ready to pull up the King James Version online, and what we'll do is we'll go to Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 15. All right, so we head in there, and it says, only the Lord, the Spirit of God, had a delight in thy fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people, as it is this day. Which that's true, then that's a true scripture, then he did choose us, then we are the Lord's portion, and you can see that also in Sirach 17 and 17, and in Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 9. But you also have to remember in Genesis chapter 17 verse 10, that is, that we had a condition in our covenant, which is that circumcision. Then you have to circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, which that also it tells you right here in verse 16, circumcise therefore the foreskin of your heart and be no more stiff-necked, because then you just can't. Okay, so how's the sound now? Then is it still low? So you can't just show up to the Most High any old way. Then he's a spirit, and we have to worship in spirit and in truth. So getting ready to head over to John chapter 4 verse 24. Here. All right, so John chapter 4 verse 24, it says, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So in this covenant that we are in with the Most High, then your flesh, then it profits nothing. Then it's the spirit that he's looking for. So getting ready to go to Romans chapter 8 verse 8. So go here, and we'll pick it up at Romans chapter 8 verse 8. So then they that are in the flesh, they cannot please God. And also, if you're operating in the flesh, you're going to be doing things of the flesh and not of the spirit. And the Most High, then he is a spirit, so then you have to worship him in that particular manner. And before we also get started, and also want to run a few more precepts, so we're going to go to Leviticus chapter 10, which I want to show an example with two of our forefathers, what happened with them when they appeared before the Most High offering works of the flesh. So picking it up in Leviticus chapter 10, verse 1 through 3, it says, "And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took either of them his censer and put fire therein." So our two forefathers, then they appeared before the Most High, and neither one of them took their censers and put fire therein and put incense thereon to burn incense before the Spirit of God, which they didn't do that. Instead, and offered strange fire before the Spirit of God, which he commanded them not. So instead of taking the fire and the incense, then they offered strange fire, so these works of the flesh, and look what happened as a result, picking up in verse 2 and 3. "And there went out fire from the Spirit of God, and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. Then Moses said unto Aaron, This is it that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come near me, and before all the people I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace." So that's what we have to remember, that you just can't appear before the Most High any old way. Then you will be sanctified, and he will be glorified as well. So want to run another precept? Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 2. Go down to 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. Which this would explain it some more. So, "Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity." So, but in a great house, which this is talking about the house of Israel, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, look at the contrast, but also of wood and of earth. So we have that semicolon there, which is getting ready to flip and go in another direction. So in some to honor, so those vessels of silver and gold, those are honorable vessels, and some to dishonor, which is that wood and earth. "If a man therefore purge himself from these, so iniquity and sin, he shall be a vessel unto honor, so sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work." And the last one I want to show you before we get started would be Sirach chapter 10, verse 19 and 20. So I'm ready to switch this over to the KJV 16:11 Apocrypha, and we'll go down to Sirach chapter 10, verse 19. All right, so "They that fear the Lord are a sure seed, and they that love him, so you're keeping the commandments, obeying his voice, an honorable plant. They that regard not the law are a dishonorable seed, and they that transgress the commandments are a deceivable seed." So yes, the Most High, then he has set his love on Israel, but you also have to remember that there definitely surely is a plumb line within the house of Israel, and it's up to you to decide, whether you want to be that honorable plant or that dishonorable seed, and depending on how you appear before the Most High, it'll determine where your resting place is going to be. So that's the thing that you have to remember with being of Israel, is that you have to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth. So getting ready to get started with the homework. And on screen, I have everybody's submissions, and just most of them. So gonna get ready to start with the submissions on the left. So first one we'll be looking at is Sister Clark's precepts. So I have Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7 verse 28 and Wisdom of Solomon chapter 4 verse 15. So picking it up, "For God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom," which that's correct. We have 4 verse 15, "This the people saw and understood it not, neither laid they up this in their minds, that his grace and his mercy is with his saints, and that he has respect unto his chosen." So Sister Clark, then she was dead on, and she hit her precepts right on the head with her homework submissions. And you just have to remember that the flesh and the spirit, they're contrary to one to the other. So the Most High, since he's a spirit, then if you're doing the things that are pleasing to him, you're going to get that love back. But if you're being an adversary, that's where you're going to run into problems. So going to pull up Galatians chapter 5 verse 17, which we could just where is it? All right, so go to Galatians chapter 5 verse 17. All right, so picking it up in Galatians 5 and 17, for the flesh lusteth against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. So when we also run that with Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, it'll let you know that you can't serve two masters. It's either you're going to love one or hate the other. And the Most High had already told us in Proverbs 8 and 17 that he loves them that loves him. So we have Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. So no man, which that's M-A-N, can serve two masters. For either he, which you can picture yourself there, will hate the one and love the other, or else he would hold to the one and despise the other. So you cannot serve God and mammon. So you can't serve the Most High and serve flesh at the same time. It's one or the other, and the Most High, and he already let us know in John chapter 4, verse 24, that he must be worshipped in spirit and in truth. So then I want to add one more to Sister Clark's precepts before we move on to the next person. So we can go to Sirach chapter 19, verse 18. And picking it up there. So the fear, so the desire of the Lord is the first step to be accepted of him, and wisdom obtaineth his love. So you just have to keep that in mind. That fear, then that's the first step to being accepted of the Most High, and his spirit being in you, that's what obtains his love. And now that I think about it, then I have another one that I want to share with y'all. So we are going to look at Sirach chapter 4, verse 14. So they that serve her, which this is talking about Christ, shall minister to the Holy One, and them that love her, so that's Christ, the Lord doeth love. So Sister Clark, then she was spot on with her precepts, and I just wanted to add more on so you can see that the precepts, when you're running them correctly, then they don't break, then it's saying the same thing. So yes, within the house of Israel, the Most High, then he set his love on us, but all Israel is not Israel, so just keep that in mind. So next person that we have is Sister Mangul, and she ran Deuteronomy 7 and 10, and Romans 11 and 22, and Psalms chapter 78, verse 58 and 59. So starting with the one at the top, so Deuteronomy 7 and 10, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to him that hateth him. He will repay him to his face. So when you refuse to obey the Most High's commandments and you transgress his word and you just rebel, then you're showing the Most High that you hate him. And when you hate him, he's going to become an adversary to you, and that's where you're going to run into problems. When you go back up to what Terry Clark put in her homework submission, for God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. Didn't say anything about the people that's despising the Most High's covenant and dealing treacherously with his commandments. So when you go back to what Sister Mangul had, Deuteronomy 7 and 10, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. So he will not be slack to him that hateth him. He will repay him to his face. And when you look below it, what else she put, then she put some good plumb line precepts there. So we got Romans 11 and 22, which is what the Christians, then a lot of them fail to remember. So behold, remember, therefore, the goodness and severity of God. On them which fell, severity, but towards thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, and if you don't continue in his goodness, thou also shalt be cut off. And she also ran Psalm 78 and 58 and 59. For they provoked him to anger with their high places. So all of these churches and these places of false heathen worship, and moved him to jealousy with graven images. And when God heard this, he was wroth and greatly abhorred Israel. So that verse right there, then it also, Psalm 78 and 59 by itself, then you can crack any Christian open, or just anybody else that thinks that you can do whatever you want and still obtain mercy at the very end, because Psalm 78 and 59, and it's just that direct. And I want to also run a few more precepts, so we'll take us to Isaiah, picking it up here. All right, we're going to go Actually, let's just use this one right here. So, um, all right. So we're going to Book of Isaiah, chapter 1, and we'll start at verse 19. So, if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. So then you'll be filled with that knowledge, and all of that to be provided to you. But if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, so with judgment. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. So how has the faithful city become a harlot? So it was full of judgment, so doctrines and teachings, righteousness lodged in it, but now murderers, which that's referring to us. Thy silver or wisdom is become dross, so it's tainted now. Thy wine mixed with water. Thy princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. So everyone loveth gifts and followeth after rewards. They judge, so teach not the fatherless, neither doeth the cause of the widow come unto them. So therefore saith the Lord of hosts, the mighty one of Israel, so I will ease me of mine adversaries and avenge me of my enemies. So then I went all the way down to verse 24 to hone in on so y'all can see that last part of verse 24. Says, I will ease me of my adversaries, which that's us. Then if you're dealing with the wrong side of the plumb line, you become an adversary to the Most High, and avenge me of my enemies. So, just keep that in mind. And then another plumb line precept I want to run would be Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 26 through 28. So we're going to go to Deuteronomy, then we'll drop this all the way down at 26. So remember, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. So our covenant, both of those are in there, the blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you this day, and a curse if you will not obey the commandments of the Lord your God, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day to go after other gods which you have not known. So that's sitting in our covenant, and now that I just, verse 28, that'll run you right back to what Sister Mangoor had with Psalm 78 and 59. For they provoked him to anger with their high places and moved him to jealousy with their graven images, which he just told us if we turn aside and not do the commandments and go after other gods, that curse will come on us. When God heard this, he was wroth and greatly abhorred Israel. So Sister Mangoor then heard precepts, and they were spot on as well. The next person we have is Sister Larry. So then she also went the plumb line route as well. So first precept that she put was Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9 through and 10. So know therefore that the Lord thy God, so he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, which we in our last workshops, and we found out what that is and how do you love the Most High, which that's when you obey his word. So, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. And here's a plumb line because that's a semicolon, so it's getting ready to change directions. And repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to them that hateth him, he will repay him to his face. So that's a guarantee, and especially, when he's repeating himself, then that's going to happen. So you may get yours in this life right here, and you'll definitely get it in a second life to come then if you don't get your act together. So thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command you this day to do them. So you have to remember that with the Most High. The covenant and mercy, that it's going to those that love him and keeping his commandments. Otherwise, you're going to get that other end of the semicolon, which getting repaid to your face. So next one that Sister Larry provided was Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1 through 3. So all the commandments which I command thee this day shall you observe to do, that you may live and multiply, which spiritually that multiply, you're multiplying these fruits, multiplying these works of righteousness, multiplying your knowledge, and go in to possess the land, which that's that New Jerusalem. You have to multiply knowledge and wisdom and understanding to go in there. Otherwise, you're going to be rejected from going in there when it comes down, which the Lord swore unto your fathers. And thou shalt remember all the way which the Lord thy God led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee, so to suffer you to hunger in the flesh, so he can feed you knowledge and bread and manna and test you, and to prove thee, to know what was in thy heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he may make thee know that man doeth not live by bread only, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. So, going back up to verse 1, then this is a key that all the commandments which I command you this day that you observe to do, that you may live and multiply, and go in to possess the land which the Lord swore unto your fathers. That's definitely something that we have to hone in on, because when you go to Revelations, which I'm getting ready to pull back up the e-Bible, and we go to Revelations chapter 22, verse 14 and 15, you can see this right here. So, picking it up at verse 14, blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city. So those are the ones that are going in to possess the land. For without are dogs, which Elder Johnson, and he had touched up on that recently. Dogs, they're characterized, these are filthy people that return back to their own filth and their own vomit. So those won't be going into the land. Sorcerers, so then these false prophets, whoremongers, so that's carnally and spiritually. So if you're whoring around with other people, that applies to you. Then if you're whoring around with other gods and with other doctrines, that's you too. Murderers, that's carnal and spiritual as well. So spiritual being if you're teaching people the ways of sin and you're causing them to turn out of the way. Idolaters, so you're worshiping other gods, then you have other things in your life that are more priority than the Most High, and whoever loveth and maketh a lie. So these people, then they won't be going in there. And then we have another precept, which would be Leviticus 18, would take us there. So going to Leviticus 18, and we'll pick it up right at 25. So starting at, well, actually this is 25. All right, so picking it up at verse 25, and the land is defiled, therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomited out her inhabitants. So you shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and you shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own nation, nor any stranger that sojourneth among you. For all these abominations have the men of the land done, which were before you, and the land is defiled. So that the land spew not you out also when you defile it, as it spewed out the nations that were before you. So when you go back to that precept, which I take this down, fat finger at that. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1, you need to multiply and increase in knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so that you can go in and possess the land. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those people that land is going to spew out, and you don't want that to happen. So, moreover, we got some more precepts from Sister Larry. Then she also went into the book of Idris, and we're going to take a look at that. So we got 2nd Idris chapter 7, verse 21 through 23. So, for God hath given straight commandment to such as came, what they should do to live, even as they came, and what they should observe to avoid punishment. Nevertheless, they were not obedient unto him, but spoke against him and imagined vain things, and deceived themselves by their wicked deeds, and said of the Most High that he is not. So just pride, and knew not his ways, but his law have they despised, and denied his covenants, and his statutes have they not been faithful, and have not performed his works. So that's Idris, giving us the lowdown of how we are. And when you go down to 32 and 33, but our fathers which received the law kept it not, and observed not thy ordinances, and through the fruit of thy law did not perish, neither could it, for it was thine, semicolon, yet they that received it perished. And this is why, because they kept not the thing that was sown in them, which the Most High, then he's given you his spirit, and you have to keep that spirit in you, and it needs to do a perfect work while you're in this life right here. So let me show you the law. So we're getting ready to go to Genesis chapter 17, verse 14, and we'll just get some more clarification on what Idris was telling us about our forefathers that perished because they didn't keep the thing that was sown in them. So here's Genesis chapter 17, and we're at verse 14. And the uncircumcised man-child, which that's M-A-N, so that's male and female, whose flesh of his foreskin, that's your heart, is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. So that's a promise, and that's a guarantee that that's going to happen. And got a semicolon there. It's getting ready to tell us why this person is going to get cut off. He has broken my covenant. So that covenant of circumcision, when you go right up here to verse 10, it tells you, so this is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised, and you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. So that's how you confirm yourself that, you're one of those worshipers that are worshiping him in spirit and truth. You're going to circumcise the flesh of your heart, because circumcision, and it's an inward thing, and it's not an outward thing. And I'm getting ready to run Romans chapter 2, verse 28. So go into the book of Romans, and we'll go to verse 28. Actually, we'll start at, verse 28. Here we are. So, for he is not a Jew, so a follower of God, which is one outwardly, neither is that circumcision which is outward in the flesh. But he is a Jew, so a follower of God, which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart, and in the spirit, and not in the letter. So just according to the law, whose praise is not of men, but of God. So you have to be walking on the right side of this covenant if you don't want to get cut off from among your people. So Sister Larry, then she did real good with her homework assignments too, and she had put one more there, which was Wisdom of Solomon chapter 5 verse 15. But the righteous live forevermore. Their reward also is with the Lord, and the care of them is with the Most High. And just notice that in that precept that she ran, it didn't say anything about the ungodly there, and it was just the righteous. So Sister Larry then did a very good job. We have Sister Barbara next. So we have her precepts. And she ran 1 John chapter 4, verse 9 and 10, Ephesians 5 and 1 and 2, and Romans chapter 8, verse 28. So picking it up at 1 John chapter 4, verse 9 and 10, and this was manifested, so made known the love of God towards us, because that God sent his only begotten Son, so a servant into the world, which this world, and don't get caught up on that, and Elder Johnson, and as well as the other elders, they've brought that out many times when you go to 2nd Idris chapter 14, verse 11, that the world, and it's divided into 12 parts, and it's talking about us. So he sent his only begotten servant, so that spirit, into the world, that we might live through him, because without that spirit resting in you, then you are just in the flesh, and it cannot please God. So herein is love, not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his servant to be the propitiation for our sins. So, her precepts, and they were good, but thing is, when you run verses like these, they do require a lot of unpacking. So, right below her precepts, and I added some stuff in red. So, these precepts, when you run them along with these extra explainer precepts, you can really edify somebody, and it'll be easier to teach these to people. So the next one she had was Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. But be ye therefore followers of God as dear children, and walk in love. So that obedience to the Most High's commandments. And if you ever want to see the definition of love, you go to 1 John chapter 5, verse 3. As Christ also has loved us, and has given himself for us an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet smelling savor. And we have Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. So before we move to the next person, and I want to just go on ahead and show the precepts that I added in to help the ones that she submitted, because these are good precepts, but they do require a lot of unpacking. So we know that this son, then that's a servant, and that's Spirit of God that was sent to us. And all you have to do is just look at Matthew chapter 3, verse 16. And you have to remember that the Spirit, then it came to show us what we need to do to get right with the Most High. Then you don't look at it according to the way that Christians see it, where they think that a man actually came down to physically die and pay for all of our sins. No, Most High, then he sent his Spirit and he sent the word unto Israel. So you got to go to Romans chapter 8, verse 3, and we'll go to Romans chapter 8, verse 3 to 5, and we'll look at 8 and 9. So for what the law could not do, and that it was weak through the flesh, God sent his own son, so that servant in a likeness of sinful flesh. So he sent that Spirit inside of sinful flesh, because that's what our flesh is, then it's sinful. And for sin condemned sin in the flesh, that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. So just remember John chapter 4, verse 24. For they that are after the flesh do mind things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. So then that they that are in the flesh cannot please God. But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is not of his. So you have to just remember that if you're going to run 1 John chapter 4, verse 9 and 10. That's why it's saying the love of God was manifested towards us. Then it was manifested toward us when he sent his Spirit into us, so that we might live through that Spirit. Because otherwise, and you're in the flesh, and if you are living in the flesh, you're going to do things of the flesh. And we already seen in Romans right here, but you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Christ, he is not of his. So you're on the wrong side of the plumb line. And then we have Romans chapter 8, verse 28. This is also a good precept as well. You just have to make sure that all things, then you understand what that's talking about. And also for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. So this all things, then I'm getting ready to show you what that's referring to, which that's knowledge and wisdom. So we have Romans chapter 7, verse 11. All good things together came to me with her, so that's Christ, and innumerable riches in her hands. So that's the good things that Romans 8 and 28 is talking about. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God. So you're keeping the commandments. So this wisdom. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Now, then if you're on the wrong side of the plumb line, Most High has something for that too, which I'm going to get ready to show you that. So we can pull up the Bible again. And since we got to go in Sirach, then we'll just use the KJV online to prevent the glitching from happening. So we're going to go to Sirach chapter 39, and I think we'll start at 26. If not, it'll be 25. So we got to go up. So we'll start at verse 25. So Sirach chapter 39, verse 25. So for the good are good things created, which we had just seen, and at Wisdom of Solomon, good things came with her. So that's Christ. For the good are good things created from the beginning, so evil things for sinners. So the principal things for the whole use of man's life are water. So you have to know what all of these are spiritually. So water, fire, got iron and salt, flour of wheat, honey, milk, and the blood of the grape, and oil and clothing. All these things are for good to the godly. So all of these good things is knowledge and this understanding, covering, and salvation. So to the sinners, they are turned into evil. Most High, then he can flip that right on you then if you're going to come to him as an adversary. So let's go down to verse 28. There be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In a time of destruction they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. So fire and hail and famine and death, all these were created for vengeance, and we also have the teeth of wild beasts and scorpions, serpents, and a sword, so that judgment, punishing the wicked to destruction. So those good things, they're for you then if you're godly, but if you're going to just be a sinner and just being ungodly, they can be turned into evil. So this was a good precept as well, and I think I skipped over one that I also had. So yeah, it was Wisdom of Solomon chapter 7 verse 27 and 28. And being but one, she, which is talking about Christ, can do all things and remain in herself. So she maketh all things new, and in all ages entering into holy souls, she maketh them friends of God and prophets. For God loveth none but him that dwelleth with wisdom. And that's why then when you go back to 1 John chapter 4 verse 9 and 10, you have to just remember, and this was manifested the love of God towards us, because that God sent his only begotten Son, his servant, into the world, which is us, that we might live through him. Because the Most High, then he loves none but them that dwell with wisdom. So Sister Collier, then she did good as well with her precepts. It's just, usually with 1 John and precepts from Paul, you have to do some additional unpacking. So when you just do those additional unpacking and you put other precepts there to explain things, these are some good verses that you put there. So we also have Sirach chapter 5 verse 5 and 6. So concerning propitiation, which that's talking about that servant that was sent to be the propitiation for our sins. So that spirit, remember this, concerning propitiation, be not without fear, so being proud to add sin unto sin. And say not, his mercy is great, he will be pacified for the multitude of my sins. For this is why. So for mercy and wrath cometh from him, and his indignation rests upon sinners. So, only Christians are going to have that mindset where they just think that the Most High's mercy is just that great, where it's going to just cover all of the sins and you can keep on doing what you want to do. So letting you know right there that the Most High, then he has two sides. And if you want to just be a sinner, you're going to get that wrath side instead of the mercy. So now that we're done with the precepts that are on the left side, we're going to look at people's homework submissions on its right side. So starting right at the top, we have Sister Collins. So we have her precepts, and she ran Deuteronomy chapter 7 verse 9 and 10 as well, and Sirach 12 and 6. So starting with the one at the top, at verse 9, know therefore that the Lord thy God, so he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, which Sister Mangul had ran that, as well as Sister Larry, that which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. And here's the plumb line again, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. So he will not be slack to him that hateth him, he will repay him to his face. So these sisters, and they were all over this with the homework. Thou shalt therefore keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day, to do them. And Sister Collins also ran another good precept, Sirach chapter 12 verse 6. For the Most High hates sinners, and will repay vengeance unto the ungodly, and keepeth them against the mighty day of their punishment. So, then she nailed it right on the head too. And a couple of our precepts that I just wanted to go ahead and tag along will be, going to go to the book of Proverbs. So I'm get ready to go there. So the book of Proverbs chapter 15 verse 9. All right, so the way of the wicked is an abomination, so it's most hated unto the Lord, so the Creator. But he loveth him that followeth after righteousness. So right there, then it ties right along with that Sirach chapter 12 verse 6 that Sister Collins ran. And then we also have, which is another precept, what was it? Oh, yeah, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14, verse 9. So we're going to run that, which I got to turn this back. Let me see if it's still on the Apocrypha. Yep. So Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14, verse 9. All right, so for the ungodly, so that's the sinner, and his ungodliness, that's the sin, are both alike hateful unto God. So you have to remember that. So Sister Collins, and she did good as well. Then she nailed it right on the head with her homework submissions. So the next person we have is Sister Collins, Sister Carla Johnson. So she ran Proverbs 8 and 17, got John 15 and 9 and 10, and Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9 and 10, so as well. So starting with the one at the top, so I love them that love me, which we had a semicolon there, so getting ready to flip directions. So this is a complete thought right here. I love them that love me. And we got semicolon, and those that seek me shall find me. So then if you're seeking after the Most High in spirit and in truth, you're going to find him. But he's letting you know right there, I love them that love me, which since we're here, then I'm going to pull back up the Bible, and I just want to show y'all 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, so this will be fresh in our heads. So at 1 John chapter 5, and we'll go to verse 3. So we'll see what this love is. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous. So none of them are hard. Of course, it's going to cause your flesh to be put to death, and you're going to endure and go through some things, but none of his commandments are grievous. So you just have to remember that. And, when I'm doing these teachings, it's not just for y'all, then it's for me as well. So it's for all of us. Like, none of his commandments are grievous, and this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. So we have that. We're going to pull back up the homework assignments, and then she put John chapter 15, verse 9 and 10. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. So continue ye in my love. If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. So verse 10, and it's key. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love. And that's a semicolon right there too. So this is a complete thought right here. Even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love. And then Sister Carla Johnson, and she also ran Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9 through 10 as well. And then I added in a few more, so 6, 7, and 8. So, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God has chosen thee to be a special people unto himself above all people that are upon the face of the earth. So that's definitely true. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people, for you were the fewest of all people, but because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he swore unto your fathers, has the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. So the king of the house of disobedience, king of confusion, just at Babylon, at Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, which we're getting ready to go right back into that plumb line right there. He is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep him his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He will not be slack to them that hateth him. He will repay him to his face. And to avoid that from happening, thou shalt therefore for that reason keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I command thee this day, to do them. So definitely a good precept there. Then it starts right at the top where it's letting us know that the Most High, then he set his love on us, and we're a peculiar people above all people that are on the face of this earth today, which that's true. But when you get right to verse 9, that's where you're looking at that fine print right there, that he keep his covenants and mercy with them that love him. And if you're going to just operate in the flesh and stop right there and not do the things that's required of God, you're going to get repaid, and you don't want that to happen. So Sister Johnson, and she did good as well. Next up, then we have Sister Melissa with Psalms chapter 145 and 20, and John 14 and 21, and Deuteronomy 10 and 15. So starting with her first precept. So the Lord preserve all them that love him, which where's the ungodly in this? Then you can't find them. But all the wicked, so this is the contrast right here, but all the wicked will he destroy. So you keep that in mind. And we have John chapter 14, verse 21. He that has my commandments and keepeth them, he is it that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father. So that goes right back to that Proverbs chapter 8, verse 17. And I will love him. So this is Christ speaking, and will make myself will manifest myself to him. So, and then we have Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 15. So only the Lord had a delight in thy fathers to love them, and he chose their seed after them, even you above all people, as it is this day, which that's a true precept, and I let that one go on ahead and slide, but she hit it right on the head with Psalms chapter 145 and 20, and John at 14 and 21. So Sister Melissa did good as well, and then we had, who else? Sister Wanda Smith, which she ran Proverbs 15 and 9, and Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 28, and Deuteronomy 7 and 9, which I don't know why this is blue, then we'll have to make it black. Because I only use blue for precepts that are coming out of the first 5 books of the law. So we'll make that black. So Proverbs chapter 15, verse 9. So the way of the wicked is an abomination unto the Lord, but he loveth him that followeth after righteousness. So that's that plumb line right there. So letting you know how he feels about the wicked, and he's letting you know how he feels about them that follow after righteousness. Then we have Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 28. For God loveth none but him that dwells with wisdom, in Deuteronomy 7 and 9. So know therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, the faithful God, which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him, and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. So everybody that submitted their homework, they did real good, and just by knocking that out, and we can all see that the Most High, yes, and he did set his love upon the house of Israel, but when it's all said and done on the day of your visitation, when you stand before him, if you were on the wrong side of the plumb line in this life right here, you're going to have a problem when you stand before him, because you got to remember Proverbs chapter 8, verse 17, and he loves them that loves him. So, everybody did good, and with this said right here, next week, and I'll be doing another teaching on this where I'll present the precepts that I had, because today then I only wanted to just go over everybody else's precepts, so I'll do mine next week. But today then I will assign the homework. So let me pull up Microsoft Teams. So we'll pull that up and go to the Preceptor Academy, and we'll go to a new assignment. So, all right, so we're going to create a new one. All right, so this is going to be the new homework assignment. Plumb line precepts. So what I want is just, so give me 5 or more precepts showing that plumb line or a separation. Actually, this is ran out, so we'll just put it here. So give me 5 or more precepts showing the mercy and wrath of the Most High. So that's what I want. That's going to be the next homework assignment, where you're just showing 5 or more precepts, just showing in Scripture the two sides of the Most High, so that mercy and wrath, depending on how you're dealing with this covenant. So if you're dealing faithfully or treacherously. So then I'm getting ready to assign that one. And I'll give you some hints before I head on out. So some of the sisters, and they already nailed it right on the head. So Sister Mangul, with Romans 11 and 22, then that's a good one to key in on. So Romans 11 and 22. So Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 9 through 11, and that's a good one right there to hone in on. And if you want to see that plumb line and that mercy and wrath from the Most High, just how those two sides work. And then another precept to hone in on would be the one that I added in, which was Sirach chapter 5, verse 5 and 6. So, concerning propitiation, be not without fear to add sin unto sin, and say not, his mercy is great, he will be pacified for the multitude of my sins. For mercy and wrath cometh from him, and his indignation rests upon sinners. So that's what I'm looking for the homework assignment. Just show me 5 or more precepts where then it has that plumb line in there, because we all need to know our God. Because then if you only think that he has one side, then you're looking at this the way that Christians do. Our God, the true God that's in heaven, that's above the firmament, and he has two sides. And you need to know that if you're seeking to worship the Most High in spirit and in truth. So that's what I'm looking for. And this teaching, getting ready to cut this one short because I know Elder Johnson has his own thing going on tomorrow. So then I just want to also give y'all time to meditate on that as well. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, peace.